I never believed in true love. Not anymore. Maybe once when I was younger, naive, and still thought the world would give back what I gave to it. But years of heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment turned me into someone who looked at love the same way one looks at a broken glass. Beautiful once, but too dangerous to touch again. I was 32, living alone in a small apartment in Seoul, surrounded by quiet walls that echoed every memory I tried to forget. My mornings were predictable. Coffee, silence, and the endless scroll through meaningless messages. My job at the marketing firm was the same: deadlines, fake smiles, and a boss who thought sarcasm was a leadership skill. I had learned to live without expecting surprises. Until that morning. It was raining, the kind of soft, melancholic rain that blurs the world behind your window. I remember running to catch the bus, holding my umbrella that kept turning inside out. That's when it happened. My heel slipped on the wet pavement, and I felt myself falling hard. Before I even understood what was happening, someone caught me. A man. He had one hand holding my arm and the other still gripping his own umbrella, steady as if the world had slowed down just for that second. His eyes, dark, warm, and filled with a quiet concern, met mine. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm, sincere. I nodded, embarrassed, my heart racing faster than it should. He smiled, helped me stand, and picked up my fallen phone from the ground. "It's not broken," he said, wiping the screen gently before handing it to me. It was such a small thing, but in that brief moment, something inside me shifted. Like a door I'd long sealed shut had creaked open just a little. I thanked him quickly, and before I could say anything else, the bus arrived. He didn't get on. He just smiled again, nodded, and walked away into the rain. I thought I'd never see him again. But life has a strange way of weaving people back into our paths. 3 days later, I walked into the coffee shop across from my office, a place I'd been to countless times. And there he was, sitting by the window reading a book. He looked different in the daylight, less mysterious, more real. I hesitated for a moment, then walked to the counter, pretending not to notice him. But when I turned to find a seat, he looked up and smiled. That same quiet, kind smile. "Fate," he said with a playful tone. I laughed nervously. "Or just a small city." He motioned to the seat across from him. "Sit with me." Something about his presence felt natural, effortless. We talked for hours that day. His name was Jihun. He was an architect who loved old buildings and rainy days, someone who found beauty in details most people ignored. He told me about how he'd recently moved to the neighborhood, trying to start over after a difficult breakup. I listened, really listened, and realized how rare that kind of honesty was. We exchanged numbers. I told myself it was just friendship, that nothing serious could come from it. But I couldn't deny how easily I smiled when his name appeared on my phone. Days turned into weeks, and soon he became part of my everyday. My morning texts, my late-night talks, my quiet companion in a world that often felt too loud. And yet I was scared. Every time I felt happiness approaching, I wanted to run. Because love, in my experience, always came with a cost. And I wasn't sure I was ready to pay it again. One evening, we were walking by the Han River. The city lights shimmered over the water, and the air smelled like spring. Jihun stopped suddenly and looked at me, really looked at me. "You keep your distance," he said softly, "even when you're standing right next to me." I froze. "I don't want to rush you," he continued. "But you don't have to be afraid of me." My throat tightened. I wanted to explain, to tell him how love had once destroyed me, how the man I trusted most had left me without a word, taking years of my life and every piece of trust one had. But instead I just said, "It's complicated." He nodded gently. "Then let's make it simple." "I'll wait." No one had ever said that to me before. That night I couldn't sleep. His words played in my mind like a melody I couldn't turn off. I realized how deeply his kindness had seeped into my walls, breaking them down without violence, just quiet patience. Weeks later, my company announced a major presentation, and I was assigned to lead it. It was my chance to finally get the promotion I'd been fighting for. I worked day and night, barely sleeping, barely eating. Jihun kept checking in, bringing me food, reminding me to rest. When the big day arrived, everything went wrong. My laptop crashed minutes before the meeting, and the backup file wouldn't open. I felt panic flooding me, the familiar taste of failure burning in my throat. Jihun was there. He'd come to support me, standing quietly in the back of the room. When I met his eyes, he just smiled, that calm, grounding smile. And somehow that was enough. I took a deep breath, stood before the board, and improvised. No slides, no visuals, just me speaking from the heart. When it was over, there was silence, then applause. My boss looked impressed for the first time in years. I walked out shaking, overwhelmed, and when I saw Jihun waiting for me outside, I ran to him. I didn't even think. I just hugged him. He held me close and whispered, "See? You can shine even without a script." That night something changed. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks, no grand confessions. Just a quiet understanding between two people who had found something rare in a noisy world. We started spending more time together, exploring the city, cooking dinner at his place, laughing at silly things. He had this way of turning ordinary moments into something beautiful. But love isn't always gentle, even when it's real. One afternoon, Jihun told me he'd been offered a project abroad. A 2-year contract in London. It was a dream opportunity, the kind architects wait a lifetime for. He looked torn, as if saying it out loud was already breaking his heart. I smiled, pretending to be strong. "You should go. You've worked for this." He reached for my hand. "And what about us?" My chest tightened. "We'll figure it out." But deep down, I knew distance changes everything. In the weeks that followed, we tried to make every moment count. Every coffee, every walk, every touch felt like a memory being built in advance, fragile and precious. The day he left, I stood at the airport holding back tears. He hugged me tightly and said, "Don't stop believing in love, okay? Even if it feels far away." When he disappeared through the gate, I broke. For months, I lived in a blur. Work, home, silence. His messages came less often as his schedule got busier. I told myself it was fine, that love doesn't always mean being together. But some nights, the loneliness was unbearable. Then one evening, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a small sketchbook filled with drawings, moments we'd shared. The cafe, the river, my apartment window during the rain. On the last page, he had written, "Every building needs a foundation. You're mine." I cried for hours. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my life, I realized that love didn't need to be perfect to be true. It just needed to be honest. And that realization changed everything. Months passed. Seasons changed. And with them, so did I. There was something about losing someone who'd made you feel alive that forces you to rebuild yourself. Not to fill the empty space they left, but to learn how to breathe again without them. I started going for long walks after work, sometimes along the same river where Jihun and I used to sit in silence, watching the lights ripple on the water. At first, it hurt. Every corner reminded me of him. But slowly, those memories became softer. They no longer pierced, they warmed. One night, while watching the city skyline, I caught my reflection in the glass of a nearby cafe. I looked different, lighter. For years, I had defined myself by what I had lost. But in that reflection, I saw someone who had survived. Someone who could love again, even if the love wasn't here. I started painting again. I hadn't done it since college, when art used to be my way of speaking what I couldn't say out loud. The first brushstroke felt hesitant, awkward. But as the colors began to blend, I felt a quiet peace I hadn't known in years. Art became my therapy, my escape, my rediscovery. And without realizing it, it also became my bridge back to life. I began sharing my paintings online. Small pieces inspired by everyday moments. The smell of rain, the curve of sunlight through the curtains, a hand holding another. To my surprise, people connected with them. Comments poured in. Messages from strangers saying my art made them feel something. That was when I realized. Maybe love isn't just what we receive. Maybe it's what we create. In words, in gestures, in colors. One day, I got a message from a local art gallery. They wanted to feature my work in a small exhibition. Me, the woman who once thought she had nothing left to give. I couldn't believe it. On the night of the exhibition, I stood in that softly lit room, surrounded by people I didn't know, looking at pieces of my soul hanging on the walls. I had painted every stage of my healing, from the gray loneliness of heartbreak to the soft gold of acceptance. And then I saw it. Him, Jihun, standing quietly near the back of the room, holding a single white flower. For a moment I thought I was imagining it. The way he looked at me, the way the world suddenly slowed down, just like the day we first met in the rain. He smiled, that same gentle, grounding smile that had once saved me from falling. I froze. My heart forgot how to beat. He walked toward me, step by step, until he was close enough for me to smell the faint trace of rain on his coat. "Hi," he said softly, almost shyly. I laughed, a broken, nervous sound that turned into a smile. "You're really here." "I told you I'd come back," he said. "The project ended early, but even if it hadn't, I couldn't stay away any longer." I didn't know what to say. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. He reached out, brushing one away with his thumb. "You look different," he said. "Stronger." "I am," I whispered. "You helped me get here." He shook his head gently. "No, you did that on your own." There was a pause, the kind that carries 1,000 words in silence. "Can we start over?" he asked finally. "Not from the beginning. From here, from who we are now." I nodded, because the truth was I didn't need the perfect story anymore. I just needed a real one. That night, after everyone left, we walked along the street outside the gallery. The air was cool, the city alive around us. Ji-hoon took my hand, not with hesitation but with certainty. Felt like coming home. We stopped by the same coffee shop where we had met months before. It was closed, but the lights inside were still glowing. We stood there, watching the soft reflection of our faces in the glass. "I missed this," I said quietly. He smiled. "Me too. You know, I used to draw that cafe from memory while I was away. It reminded me of you." I leaned against his shoulder. "I used to walk by the river just to feel close to you." He turned to me, his expression serious now. "I don't want to lose you again." "You won't," I said. "Not this time." And it was true. Because love, real love, doesn't depend on distance or circumstance. It grows in the spaces between the words, in the quiet understanding that two people choose each other again and again. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a rhythm. Ji-hoon found a new position in Seoul and we began to build something together. Not perfect but honest. We cooked dinner together, danced in the kitchen, argued about silly things, made up before we slept. I learned that love isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's the steady light that guides you home after a long day. And one evening while I was painting by the window, Ji-hoon came behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you working on?" he whispered. "A memory," I said. He smiled against my neck. "Of what?" "The day we met. The rain. The moment I stopped falling." He was quiet for a while, then said softly, "You know, I think we both fell that day." When I turned around, he was holding a small box. My breath caught as he opened it. A simple silver ring, elegant, timeless. "I don't want to rush you," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "But I also don't want to wait a lifetime. I don't need perfect. I just need you. The way you are now, with your scars, your laughter, your strength." Tears filled my eyes again. "Yes," I whispered. 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and in that moment everything around us disappeared. The city, the noise, the years of pain. All that remained was the quiet truth between us, that love had found its way back, not because it was destined to, but because we had chosen to believe again. The wedding was small, just close friends, family, and soft music under strings of warm lights. It wasn't grand, but it was ours. When I looked at Ji-hoon as I walked down the aisle, I saw not just the man I loved, but the reminder of every reason I'd almost given up, and every reason I hadn't. After the ceremony, we stood beneath a tree covered in fairy lights, laughing as the rain began to fall again. Just like that first day. Everyone ran for cover, but we didn't move. We danced in it, just the two of us, barefoot, drenched, and free. He kissed my forehead and whispered, "See? Sometimes the rain doesn't mean sadness. Sometimes it means beginnings." I laughed, resting my head on his chest. "You've always loved the rain." "And you," he said softly. "Always you." Years later, when I look back on that chapter of my life, I realized something beautiful. Love was never gone. It was waiting for me to stop hiding, to open my heart again, to let the world surprise me. Ji-hoon and I built a home together, filled with books, art, and laughter. And every year, on the anniversary of that rainy day, we go back to that same street where we met. We stand there, umbrellas in hand, and smile, because that's where everything began. Sometimes I think about how close I came to giving up on love, on life itself. But now, when I wake up beside the man who once caught me from falling, I realize something simple yet profound. True love doesn't arrive when you're ready for it. It arrives when you finally believe you deserve it. So if you're listening to this, wherever you are, don't lose faith. Love isn't a myth. It's not luck. It's the quiet miracle that happens when two broken hearts decide to heal together. Guys, yes, true love still exists.